Let's take a trip back in time, way back. We're going 4.4 million years into the past to uncover the story of a single meal. Now that might sound simple, but this could be the most important meal in all of human history, because what our ancestors ate, well, that might be the very thing that made us who we are today. So what was on the menu for our earliest, deepest relatives? This question, it gets right to the heart of our own origin story. Was it some dramatic, epic hunt out on the savannah, or was it something else entirely? You know that popular image of the caveman, spear in hand, taking down some massive beast? It's powerful, for sure, but that whole scene, that's from much, much later in our evolutionary story. To find the real origin, we have to look smaller. We have to look at the forensic evidence left behind, etched right into the fossilized teeth of our ancestors. And our guide on this journey is a truly remarkable early hominin genus that lived millions of years ago, Ardipithecus. We know them from species like Ardipithecus ramidus and the even older Ardipithecus kadabba. So let's pull up a chair, set the table, and see what we can learn from them. So our main character is Ardipithecus ramidus, and the most famous example we have is a female skeleton named Ardi. She was discovered in what's now Ethiopia, and she gives us this unprecedented window into our own evolution. And fittingly, her name means ground or root in the local language, because she is, quite literally, right there at the roots of our family tree. So how in the world do you reconstruct a 4.4 million-year-old diet? Well, paleoanthropologists basically become detectives, and teeth are their absolute best clues. Everything from the thickness of the enamel to these tiny microscopic wear patterns, it all tells a story. All right, so check this out. It breaks down the evidence perfectly. On one hand, you have chimpanzees. They specialize in soft fruits, so they have pretty thin enamel. On the other hand, you've got later hominins, like australopithecus, who evolved really thick enamel for grinding down tough stuff like tubers. And Ardi? Her enamel is right in the middle. That tells us her diet wasn't specialized at all. She was eating a bit of everything. So the main takeaway here is that Ardi was a generalist. She wasn't a dedicated frugivore or fruit eater, and she wasn't spending her days cracking open hard nuts either. All the dental evidence points to her being incredibly adaptable, building a diet from all sorts of different sources. But we can get even more specific, thanks to some really cool chemical analysis. By looking at stable isotopes in her tooth enamel, scientists can figure out what kinds of plants she was eating. And this chart just lays it out brilliantly. Her diet was overwhelmingly based on what we call C3 plants. Things you find in the woods, like trees, shrubs, and fruits. C4 plants, which are mostly the tropical grasses you'd find on a savanna, they barely even register. So when you put all those puzzle pieces together, a really clear picture emerges. Ardi was a woodland omnivore. She was foraging for ripe fruits like figs, nibbling on young leaves and seeds, but she also likely topped up her diet with protein from insects, eggs, and maybe even the occasional small mammal. It was a flexible, diverse menu, all provided by the forest. But the investigation into Ardi's teeth revealed something else, something completely unexpected. It's a surprising twist that has nothing to do with food and everything to do with family. It's a clue that totally changes how we think about our earliest ancestors. Okay, just take a look at this. It's incredible. On the left, that's the canine tooth of a male chimpanzee. It's basically a large, sharp, dagger-like weapon used for intimidation and fighting other males. And on the right, that's the canine of a male Ardipithecus. It's tiny, it's blunt, it's diamond-shaped. In fact, scientists call it feminized because it's much closer in size to a female's canine. Now, this little anatomical detail, it has massive implications. The fact that these fighting canines are gone suggests a huge social shift. Conflict between males was probably way less common than in chimps. So instead of a society built on aggression and dominance, Ardi's world was likely one where cooperation was starting to become a much bigger deal. And look, this isn't just some fringe idea. The very scientists who studied Ardi made this powerful statement. What they're saying is, we can't just look at modern chimpanzees and assume our ancestors behaved the same way. Ardi shows that our lineage was on a completely different social path, right from the very beginning. Okay, so we have the diet and we have these amazing social clues. Now let's combine them and try to build a complete picture of Ardi's world, a life she would have spent as a cooperative woodland omnivore. All the other fossils found alongside Artie paint this incredibly vibrant picture of her habitat. It wasn't an open savanna like people used to think. It was a mosaic landscape. And she clearly preferred the wooded areas near rivers, where all those food sources we've been talking about, like figs, palms, and hackberries, were easy to find.
Her unique anatomy tells us exactly how she moved through this world. She was what scientists call a facultative biped, which just means she could walk on two legs when she needed to. Up in the trees, her grasping big toe made her a really agile climber. But on the ground, she walked upright, which was perfect for traveling between patches of forest, probably supplementing her diet along the way. And that ability to climb was absolutely critical because Artie's world was a dangerous place. It was a landscape of fear, filled with predators like hyenas, saber-toothed cats, and even giant snakes. For these early hominins, survival wasn't just about finding food. It was about avoiding becoming food. The trees, they were the ultimate escape route.
So now we can finally connect all the dots. The food they ate, the family structure they were starting to build, and the way they walked. It all comes together to tell a revolutionary new story about why we became human. For decades, the leading theory for why we started walking upright was the savanna hypothesis. The idea that we stood up to see over tall grass. But as we've just seen, Artie didn't live on a savanna. This is where the provisioning model comes in. It suggests we stood up for a completely different reason, to free our hands to carry food. And here's how it works. It's really elegant. Those small canines, they point to a new social strategy with less conflict and more cooperation. This opens the door for males to provide high-value food for a specific female and her kids. And how do they do that? Well, they walk on 2 feet, freeing up their hands to carry all those precious resources back home.
What's so fascinating is how this all creates a kind of feedback loop. A less aggressive social structure favors the males who provide food. Providing food requires free hands, which in turn drives the evolution of walking upright. This simple, everyday need to share a meal may have sparked the very traits that make us who we are.
It's a really profound thought, isn't it? We often imagine our evolution being driven by these epic, heroic struggles for survival. But the evidence from Artie suggests it might have been driven by something much quieter, much more cooperative, the simple need to forage, to provide, and to share. A 4.4 million-year-old meal that truly set us on our feet.